Welcome everyone to Tech Tuesday. I'm Kevin Hunter with Harry Brelsford. We have a special guest joining us here today, Brian Slade from Resurgence 2020, talking about the event that's going on. Harry, take it away, introduce Brian, and then let's get into talking about this upcoming conference.
Absolutely. So, a little context first, Kevin. As you know, the first couple years we have done, the couple years we've done Tech Tuesday, I would often be in another city at a different conference. My favorite was South by Southwest, a little over a year ago in Austin. That was a fun couple broadcasts. And events have gone away with the pandemic for now. So events have shifted to online. And Brian reached out to tell me about a small business sales conference, 4 days online. What do we got here? June 22nd through 25th. And I thought, you know what? Let's talk about this, Kevin, because this is what events are today, and people need to kind of get their arms around that. And then, furthermore, in meeting up with Brian, Brian, you had some time at Microsoft, and I've got my Microsoft shirt on for Small Business Server. That's my claim to fame. So we have more in common than we realize, and you two have more in common than you realize, both having experience in the automobile industry. And I think that can be the use case as we talk about your sales conference. But this conference applies to anybody, any line of work with sales. So with that said, Kevin, back to you, and maybe we bring Brian in.
All right, thanks, Harry. Brian, if you would start by sharing a little bit of what the audience can expect by attending Resurgence 2020, and then maybe dig into a little bit of the return on investment for people, because investment of time, especially given the factors that we're looking at economically for a small business anywhere, is what can they be looking at, or what should they expect in terms of return on investment of both time and money they'd put into attending Resurgence 2020?
Sure, absolutely. And once again, Harry and Kevin, thank you again for allowing me to come on your program. So GDA, we've been around 30 plus years, have worked with a lot of the kind of a who's who within the industry. So the American Express, Microsoft, IBM, American Honda, people like that. So what we're looking to do with this event, just to be very transparent and matter of fact, is to help businesses. The reason why we've titled it a small business seminar is because, quite frankly, we feel that those businesses have been impacted more than anyone else by what's going on with the COVID-19 virus. And so when we first thought about, we took all of our content that we've had over 30 years, thought about how we've worked with these very large multinational companies, and said, what can we do to help these companies? So the first thing is that we want to accomplish, as you can see there, is we want to help them stop the bleeding. And by stopping the bleeding, we're talking about to generate immediate and that critical revenue. Kevin, when you talk about an ROI, everything that we're going to talk about in our program is virtually, and not only is it going to be virtual, but people who do sign up for it, they will have access to the content for 30 days after the event. So if you miss it, want to go back and look in on it, you absolutely can. They'll also have access to a forum where they can reach out to us, because once again, this is all about trying to help them be successful, help them be successful. And when we say be successful in the beginning, let's call it what it is right now. It's just be able to stay open. So once again, the program is broken down to generate immediate and critical revenue. Now, when you think about from an ROI standpoint, it really kind of comes about as far as what you're selling, what your business is. But I would, think fundamentally for most businesses, just one sale is going to help you, achieve back your ROI. Now, the second part where the ROI really takes off and becomes a hockey stick is that second goal that we have. And the second goal is, once again, these businesses, they're behind. Every business is behind because of the shutdown. So what we're going to do is we're going to help them show how they can produce 12 months worth of revenue in a very shortened time frame, whether it's 7, 8 months, however long they've been closed. Now, to achieve that, you're not going to be able to be successful by having just the status quo, industry averages, things along those lines. And the best example that I like to bring up with our work and how we've helped companies like this, and like we'll talk about at the event, is with our work with American Honda. So within the car business, the average closing ratio is anywhere from 18 to 24%, which means 3/4 of everybody who walks on a lot buys a car 72 hours after being there. Obviously, to generate what we're talking about, this type of growth, 12 months worth of revenue in less than 7 or 8 months, those types of standard closing ratios are not going to, it's not going to be sufficient. So if we go back to our work with American Honda, and like we're going to talk about at this event, and we're also going to have someone from American Honda to talk about how we specifically help them. The people that we train sold 3 times as many cars as those who didn't. So once again, that's the type of growth, and that's the way that they're going to be able to achieve, success and get back and to where they need to be. And then when we talk about success and getting back to where they need to be from a managerial or ownership standpoint, we're going to have on the 4th day, that one's really geared towards management and how we can develop that foundational framework, as it says there, for that sustained business success in that post-COVID-19 world. And we're talking about not only the sustained success, but then also, of course, how they can coach, counsel, and train the people underneath them. Because once again, coming back, it's just going to be something that we've never seen before. And once again, these are the things that are most important for this event. And it's all about, when you talk about ROI, one sale, just one sale, they will easily, generate the ROI that they're looking for. But once again, where the hockey stick really takes off and the ROI becomes exponential is when they then produce that equivalent of 12 months worth of revenue in less than 8 months.
Yeah, Brian, I in listening to you, it kind of, you're building upon a conversation we had back in March. We had one of the rotating sharks on Shark Tank, Matt Higgins, on over on the SMB Nation side. And now he's an investor and blah, blah, blah. And he talked about, with the current climate, his speech was just to survive. He didn't even go into thrive. And this is a smart guy who's made a number of investments, and he's like, right now, your job is to survive. And those that survive in the next 12 months, 24 months, whatever, that you're going to be the last man standing potentially, and then you can thrive. Now, I heard that message. I've taken that to heart myself. But you're also taking it to the next level. First, yes, we're talking survive. But then you're introducing, I hear the notion of growing and potentially thriving. So you're compounding on that.
Absolutely, and I think you're spot on with a lot of times this is going to be a war of attrition, and it gets back to what our first immediate goal is: immediate revenue, and that immediate critical revenue, so they can stay open, pay their bills, get those sales that they need. And once again, we're going to talk about market demand generation, how to call on past customers, add-on sales, different things like that, because you're exactly right. In that war of attrition, if you're the last one standing, you should fundamentally, just because you survive, you should be stronger. And then once again, we're going to give them the tools and the resource to then absolutely unequivocally be more successful.
And Brian, why don't we go to the agenda so
Sure.
people can see a little bit more about that, if you want to walk Kevin and I through that a little bit.
Sure. So once again, as we talk about the immediate goal, and this schedule is set up like it is for a reason. So the first thing is if you look at all the topics on that first day, they're exactly that. Follow on and upgrade their existing customers. I think we'd all agree, existing customers, those are going to be, it's what it is, your easiest sale, because they know you, they like you, they trust you. I think, Kevin, when you talk about your past experience, it definitely played out there. One of the other things then I also want to bring up is demand generation, how to build that massive customer rush. So we worked with Apple back in the early 2000s. Now, if you think about, compare and contrast Apple and Samsung. Okay, now and I'm just talking about phones here, right? A lot of times it is what it is. A Samsung phone, you could say that it was more technically advanced at times than the iPhone, right? Forward-facing camera, bigger screen, yada, yada, yada. However, we worked with Apple that when they do a product launch or to create demand generation, they create a feeding frenzy. People are lining up to get in there to buy that product. Versus Samsung, they just do a ho-hum product launch and away you go. So it's really going to be, we're going to talk about that day around demand generation and how to build that massive rush. And where we're going to have panelists, from these different companies. We're going to talk about how we work with them. So just from a small business standpoint or business leadership standpoint, it's almost going to be like getting a master's degree or being able to take those different type of Socratic type of learning, because they'll be able to pick the brain of these business leaders. You see Merit's, Microsoft, Honda, Chrysler, but then there'll also be some small businesses in there as well. The next 2 days are once again spot on that goal of how to be better, how to be more effective, how to get out of the status quo to where you grow your skill set to then obviously trickle down, grow your closing ratio, grow your success rate to where you can do 12 months of revenue in less than 7 to 8 months. So that's all about, effective selling, as you see days 1 and 2. And then last but not least, and by the way, days 1 through 3, whether you're an individual contributor, a business leader, etc., those days are perfect for you. The 4th day, really, I would say, while an individual contributor will definitely get some value out of it, I would say that's really more, as you can see by the title, from the business leader, management, because it's all about creating that sustainable framework to where you can get success immediately, stop the bleeding as we talked about, but then set yourself up for a successful framework in the future.
Sure. Hey, Kevin, I see some car companies listed. That's your reputation. What do you think about all this? What do you think about this event?
Well, there's a couple of things that Brian said here, and I 100% agree with the fact that folks are going to have to rethink a little bit of their strategies and their methods of approaching their game in order to have the kind of result that he's talking about. They're going to have to rethink it. And I think about, I wrote a book in 2015 titled, "Is That the Best You Can Do?" It was actually a phrase stolen right out of the car business because people like to ask a salesperson or a dealership that question. No matter what the numbers are, they could have the best deal in the world, but they're going to say, "Is that the best you can do?" And I thought about if you applied that to yourself, and what if the people in the business applied that question to themselves? And one of the chapters in that book, "Is That the Best You Can Do?" is titled Fact Box. And the Fact Box was all around challenging where you're at and how you create this paradigm shift in your business. And one of the ways of reinventing yourself is actually taking all of these facts and all of these truths that you've known to be critical to your success to this point. And if you put all those facts on the table and say, if none of these things were true, what would I be doing instead? And the thing is that right now, with what the current economic environment is and with the challenge that people are facing right now, you have to take every single one of those things that you have held to be true to the success of your business, put them on the table and ask that question. If none of these things were true, what would I be doing instead? And one of the things, that I'm hearing loud and clear coming out of this Resurgence conference is that people will be given the opportunity really to challenge that mindset of where they're at. Because I can tell you right now, it's going to be a completely different game for them moving forward. Even, talking about the automotive industry, I'm seeing the expectations, the understandings, the way people see themselves involved, participating in the car business changing rapidly over the last 30, 60, 90 days, and how they see themselves even purchasing a car in the days ahead. And if the people on the sales end of that are not seeing that and are not shattering those paradigms that they've been holding so precious to, this is how we sell a car and this is how we do our process. If you don't put all those facts on the table and go, we got to change something, and if so, what is it? Wow, you're going to lose a ton of steam, and a ton of opportunities just going to go to the wayside. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is really what I'm seeing here, and what I heard Brian say in the beginning here is that, talking about taking 12 months of revenue and figuring out how to produce that in 7 months or 8 months, basically crushing that time frame. And I think of how critical that really is in anything I've ever been involved in, ever, over the years. And when I mentioned that I came into even the contact with the automotive industry with a media background, I was broadcasting the Business Forum show. So I was visiting with business guests from all different imaginable walks of life. And I tell you, this whole thing as far as time, if somebody said, I'll give you $200 and you said, that sounds great. For what? And they said, well, it'll be 12 months from now. You're not interested at all really anymore, because they're going, well, that's meaningless in a year. And I said, well, actually, no. All you have to do is give this sentence for the next 10 seconds, and here's the $200. And you're going, and the only thing I did was change the time. And now all of a sudden that money is exciting. So when you think about how important it is to crush that time frame, I even think a little bit about my military background and remember an exercise that we had in the field one day where they put a fallen soldier. It was just a mock exercise, but they put a fallen soldier out there in the field, and the thing is that soldier's life depended on you being able to return him from the location he was to the helicopter in 2 minutes. So what if you do it in 5 minutes? The only difference is time, but he dies. What if you do it in 30 seconds? Well, probably his chance of living becomes significantly greater, and the only difference was time. So when you think about business right now in this current economy, the time is absolutely everything, and you're going to have to figure out how to produce the same kind of result that you did in a year or a month or whatever. You're going to have to produce that result in a lot less time. And I can tell you that from my own personal team and the things that we're working with. We're in the midst of COVID like anybody else, but I have doubled the number of people right now today to this year over last year. We've doubled the number of people who are working with us on what we're doing. And on our worst day, we have tripled our revenue over last year. So I can tell you that by thinking about what you're doing, reinventing what you're doing, and being okay with taking these facts and throwing them on the table and say, what if they're not true? What would we do instead? You absolutely got to do that if you think you're going to survive this COVID thing. So I applaud what you're doing here with this, Brian, and I think our small business audience should absolutely be thinking about attending Resurgence 2020.
And Brian, before you reply to that and maybe take us out with some final thoughts, I did want to show you, Kevin, that I took your phrase and it's made the sticky Hall of Fame on my mounted monitors, my son's phone numbers. So there you go. Brian, a couple thoughts and maybe take us out with some comments about how to sign up.
I'll tell you, can you go back real quick though, Harry? Because I do want to comment on one thing. So one of the things that you mentioned, Kevin, was doing things a little bit differently, right? And then also, how can you, and then how you can be successful. And a lot of times, I like to say, the difference between good and great is finite. The other thing I think that, you know, if you're a small business and you may think, well, gosh, what am I going to learn from these large companies? How are they going to help me? So a real quick story I want to talk about is our engagement with American Express, because I think that will really resonate with people, and they can take that and you talk about ROI, Kevin, they could immediately utilize what we did with American Express. So if you remember about maybe 15 or so years ago, you know, when MasterCard was running these commercials, well, if you're going to the Winter Olympics, you better not take your American Express because they're not going to take it, right? If you remember those commercials, well,
right,
that kind of upset them, and they weren't too happy with that. So they hired us to fundamentally, they targeted 20 customers who did not take the American Express card. And they said, we want to go get those 20. So if you think about small businesses or any business, there's always going to be 20 customers that you want to get. That if you get them, you're going to be set up and be so much more successful. So one of the things we're going to talk about at that panel is how we worked with American Express to turn around what they were doing. And they were trying to get these 20 customers forever, right? And they were no. And how we worked with them, some of the things that we put in place. And once again, these businesses who attend this event, they will immediately get that information and immediately be able to put it to practice. And to show how successful we were, within 6 months, we got all 20 for American Express. And once again, we can show the businesses and the people who are involved in this program how to do the same. Now, Harry, if you go to to that last page, that is, you know, how you get involved. You know, once again, you see the URL there. The other thing that I absolutely want to highlight is that specific code that you guys have put together, Harry and Kevin, to help everybody who gets signed up. They'll get an immediate $100 discount, you know, but they have to use that code, and that code is very specific there. And once again, the dates are June 22nd to the 25th. All the times are Eastern Standard Time. And once again, by signing up for the event, you will have access to this content for 30 days afterwards, as well as a forum-based discussion, to where, once again, if you're running into some issues, points, clarification, we are here to help you. Growth development, we put this program together for one reason and one reason only, and it gets back to your point there, Kevin, is to help these businesses be successful, and just survive, both now and in the future. So extremely excited about this event. Once again, with our 30 years of history and the content that we have, as we talked about, Harry, I mean, I've worked with Microsoft Crestron. I've always worked with top of line companies. The product and the information that we're going to share is the best product I've ever had to sell. So I'm extremely excited, and I know people who attend this event, they're going to walk away there, ready to go, ready to start executing and putting this stuff to work right away.
All righty. Well, I think we hit a home run. Kevin, final thoughts?
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here on Tech Tuesday, and special thanks to Brian for joining us. Go to the website, growthdevelopment.com/resurgence. We'll put that in the links down below the video, so make sure you check that out. And then the promo code as well, the $100 off from the Tech Tuesday discount. We'll make sure we include that as well. But put that in, and make sure you guys attend Resurgence 2020. Your future could well rest on your attendance of the conference, so make sure you do that. Again, Kevin Hunter with Harry Brelsford here on Tech Tuesday. Thanks, Brian, for joining us. Till next time, take care, everyone.